Hello and welcome. My name's Robin, and I would like to take you through my workflow for recording demos and lectures, such as the very video you are watching now. And my purpose here is to outline the workflow and give you some handy tools to use that are all free to download. And I'm not going to get into all the nitty gritty of every piece of software. Nor will I say too much about the hardware side of things because, of course, every computer is different. All I'm going to assume is that you have a microphone set up, whether directly into the computer, through a webcam, or through an external audio capture device. It doesn't really matter which way. So long as you can get sound into your computer, you're grand. And I'm going to assume that you have a suitable computer for this. So one with the sort of screen size and resolution that you want to capture, and one that is sufficiently powerful to do the job. And I will say a little bit more about that later on. So in front of us here, I've got a little folder set up, demo, ready to go for the files I'm going to be producing. And I have my monitor, which is a full HD size, which is important. You do need to know the resolution of your monitor. Now I'm running here on Windows 10, though you probably wouldn't necessarily know from this picture of the surf. But well, not everything, but most of what I show you will work on different computer platforms, starting with the software. So here I have the three pieces of software that are handy for doing this. Now, I prefer using OBS Studio for the actual recording. Then there is Handbrake, which, yes, got it. There's Handbrake, which, as it says, is a video transcoder, which is useful for getting your recorded file into the right format for your editor. And in my case, I use DaVinci Resolve, which is now up to version 16. The OBS Studio, as you can see, runs on Windows, Mac, or Linux. It is open source and free and is quite widely adopted. It's certainly not new software, and it's useful for both video recording and live streaming. You can see now that Handbrake is also available for Mac OS, Windows, or Linux. It is also open source and quite handy to use. Gives you a nice graphical interface to transcode your files. I'll explain a bit more about that in a moment. And then DaVinci Resolve, if I click download here, it is also cross-platform Mac, Windows, Linux, and there is a free version and then there is a paid version called Studio. The trick here is that I'm currently using OBS Studio to record this video. So if I show you OBS Studio, it is actually in operation. So here it is. So just a side note, I have a 2-monitor setup on the computer so that I can dedicate one monitor to what my viewer is going to see, what's being recorded, the monitor in front of you. And my second monitor has things like this panel. That's why I can move it off screen like this to my other monitor, right? And you can see that if I move it here, I get this lovely recursive effect because it's showing me what it's recording. And of course, yeah, cool. Cool kind of Hall of Mirrors effect there. But if you can ignore that part of the screen, if it doesn't drive you crazy, OBS can be a little bit difficult to get one's head around. That's why you're watching this video. I'm going to make it quite easy. Really, it's all about the scenes here. So every scene is a complete recording setup. So you create a new scene with the plus button. You can delete an existing scene. You can reorder them. And then every scene has multiple sources, and you can see that this general scene that I'm using now to record has 2 sources. It's got an audio source and it's got a monitor source, and that's it. That's all I'm recording. Now I've done something a little sophisticated with the audio, but you don't need to worry about that. So all you do is you create a new scene and then you add the sources that you want. So if I hit the plus button, you can see there's audio input. That would be your microphone. There's audio output. That would be if you want to record the output of any programs you are capturing, which is quite important. There are specific things like browser windows and game capture, image slideshows and that, but really display capture is the third prominent thing that you probably want to set up. And for each of these, once you have them there, if I right click, I can look at the properties. So the properties on my monitor, all I can do is choose between my two monitors here, and I can choose if the mouse cursor itself will be captured. And of course, it's very handy to do so when you're doing a demo so that people can see your mouse. I've made my mouse pointer larger and yellow in my operating system settings. That's also quite a handy thing to do. One thing OBS does not do is it doesn't have any facility to highlight the mouse. But if you wish, there are various third-party utilities you can get to do that while you're recording. So likewise, if I look at the mixed audio, if I right-click and look at properties, it's just specifying the device that I'm capturing. And because I have an external digital audio card with multiple channels, it's got 8 analog channels plus more, I have quite a few options here. You may not have any options. You might just have the one option, your microphone. That's fine. Something that is not apparent is that each of these sources can be processed in different ways. So if I right click and look at filters, you can see that I have a compressor on my audio and I have EQ. You can set up various filters here. Some are built in, compressor, expander, limiter, and so on. Or you can choose from your VST plugins. So in this case, I'm actually using the plugins that come with Reaper, the DAW. They make available a suite of simple, standard, but very usable plugins that are then also just fit right inside OBS. But this is entirely optional. I like to run the vocal mic through some compression and equalization just so that the levels are a bit more prominent before I get, well, really it actually eliminates the need for me to do any audio work in post-production and just speeds up the process for me. So the more you know about that, the more you know about audio processing, obviously the better off you'll be, but you don't really need to do any of that necessarily. You can see we have an audio mixer here. I've got several audio channels set up. You don't need to worry so much about that, but you can see that the output from the applications, there's none right now. My microphone input is registering a nice healthy level. And then I have actually a mix of the two set up, which looks to be a little bit hot. Actually, it's getting into the red there. Hopefully that's not a big problem for this recording. Okay, so once we have a scene set up with our audio input and our monitor, our video input, we're almost ready to go, but we do need to click on settings here and ensure that a couple of things are set up correctly for us. First of all, the tabs here, if you check out output, I'm in the simple output mode, and some of these will be hard for you to read, perhaps because they are grayed out. You can, of course, always pause the video to check what's here. They're grayed out because I'm in the middle of recording and it won't let me change them. But there's a few important things I want to point out, and they're all in this recording section here. So first of all, the recording path I have set to a folder on my hard drive that called RIPS, which is where I put all such files for convenience. The recording quality is set to indistinguishable quality, large file size, and that is to preserve as much of the screen quality as possible. The recording format, I chose an MOV, a QuickTime sort of format. Doesn't really matter too much, probably which one you choose at this stage. And the encoder I have set to hardware, which you should do if you can, because if it's just better having your hardware doing the encoding rather than having your software doing the encoding, which is generally slower and might take up more of your processor and hence interfere with anything else you're doing. And then you do want to click also on video and double check these resolutions. So the base or canvas resolution is the size of the screen you're recording. In this case, 1920 by 1080 pixels, which is also called 1080p. It's also called Full HD. It's a high quality resolution. And then the output scaled resolution, I have made sure is the same. So I am not scaling down my screen. I'm recording the full size. This is quite important when you're doing screencasts because the ability to read small text on the screen, as you're trying to do now watching this demo, is quite critical. And if you provide the full quality, the text will be as crisp as possible on the viewer's computer. Okay, when all that's done, you can hit start recording when you're ready to go. And then this ticks away in the background. You can see it's using, on my computer, 2.3% of the CPU, which is nothing. When I'm done, I'll hit stop recording. Okay, let me move this out of the way. Okay, so when I finished the recording then, my RIPS folder will have something like this. It will have a date stamped file name in MOV format as specified, and yeah, it's all ready to go. So the next thing I would do is copy that file to my working folder. As we saw, that is this demo folder here. Bring that onto this screen. So you can see I've got some work already done here ahead of time to show you. So I copied that over here and I called it recording. So that is step one. Step one is recording your demo or your lecture or whatever else it is you're doing. Step two is to use Handbrake. And when you launch Handbrake, it's going to look something like this. And you can drop a file or folder here. I'm going to do that. I'm going to take my recording file I just made and I'm going to drop it here. Now, once again, we're presented with lots of different information. Handbrake will rip DVDs. It will allow you to preserve chapters, do stuff with subtitles, add in extra audio tracks, and so on. But none of that is important to us here. You can simply go over to the preset panel. I'm going to close up General, go down to Production, and click on Production Standard. So I'm going to use the Production Standard preset. The second thing I'm going to do is make sure I have a decent, I'm going to save it to a decent place here. Transcoded is just what I'm going to call it. And then you can hit start. That's all there is to it. And when you're done, you'll end up with this file here. Now, why are we doing this? Well, it turns out that the files produced by OBS are not directly readable by DaVinci, the editor that I prefer. But after going through this stage, they are. This is a complicated matter to do with different file formats and codecs that I won't really get into. Suffice it to say that a program like Handbrake can often simply just by putting one extra step into your workflow can just solve these problems. So this is just the easiest solution I've cooked up. So if I launch DaVinci Resolve up to version 16 at the time of this video, 16.2 actually, it will take a little while to load. This is not a tutorial in DaVinci Resolve, but I will just start a new project, call it my new project. Whoops. Here it is, and I'll make sure I've got my media pool open at the side here in my timeline in my edit view. And now I need to find where that video is. There we go. I have it in this folder, of course. Transcoded is what it was called, and I can just drag that into here. Because this is a brand new project and we don't have a timeline configured yet, DaVinci has this very friendly notice. Automatically adapt my timeline to suit the video. There it is. Then all I need to do is drag it into here. It was just some nonsense that I recorded. Let's play back a bit. It's just one of my videos on YouTube, really. One of my live performances that I have running. But you can see the video is here, the audio is here. It's perfectly fine and ready to edit. Put some titles on the front, some credits on the back, a copyright statement, edit out any bits where I said too often, as I just did, and edit out any pauses, and you're done. So in DaVinci Resolve, there are presets for rendering. I can just take the YouTube preset, which is set to my full HD resolution. It's going to produce a QuickTime format with H.264 codec, etc., etc. Sure, whatever. File name, I'll call it result. Then it asks me where the file destination, where I want to put that. Of course, I'm going to put it in my RIPS folder where I put all such things. And here it is over here. So if you had more than one project to do, you can queue them all up and render them all at once, say overnight if it's going to take a long time. So if I hit start render, and you can see it actually working through the timeline, scrolling through, rendering this 5-minute long video. I'll just skip forward in time a bit now. Okay, so as we rejoin this process, we're at 96, 97% completion, 98. It does take its sweet time. I would recommend that you don't do anything else on your computer during this stage while it's rendering, because everything you do will slow the process. And I have had it glitch out before. I think when I was just doing too much other video stuff at the same time. Now, again, this totally depends on your system. If you have a fast multi-core chip, an i7 or something, and a lot of memory, then you're probably not going to have a big issue. But it's just best, if you want the job to be done quickly, just to let DaVinci have 100% of the computer's attention while it does that. Right, well, I can close DaVinci, save the project. Yes, why not? So the final step then, step 4 in this process, if I go to Chrome here, is to upload your video to your YouTube channel. And again, it's a similar process if you're using Vimeo or some other service. I've just chosen YouTube because it's quite straightforward and quite popular, of course. So there's this little the interface for managing your channel and your account is really complicated, I have to say. But there's this little icon here that looks like, I guess, a camera with a plus sign in it, although it ends up looking sort of like a medical, a first aid symbol. If you click on that, then you can upload a video, and it gives you a simple Dropbox that you can drop your file in, the one called result in this case. This is my video. You can write a description and so on. Okay, so it's uploading while you do all this. It's uploading in the background. You can see down here the progress. It's 15% at this point. No, it's not made for kids. That's important because there are special laws to protect children that YouTube is very particular about recently. You can add this to one of your existing playlists if you wish. So this stage here is actually quite important, the visibility. If the visibility of your video is public, then anyone can find your video. If they search for the right keywords, it might come up. You can set your video to private so that you have to specify individuals who can see your video or put a password on it. But quite often for things I put online that I want for a specific group of people, I simply make it unlisted. And that way, if I give the link to the video, which is right here, if I give the link to someone, they can find it without any further hullabaloo, no passwords or anything necessary. But since it's unlisted, it won't show up in general searches and listings. It's not actually protected from people, but it's sort of hidden. It's obscured. I find that the most convenient. Say if I'm putting a lecture online that I want to share with a particular cohort of students. Okay, and then I can hit save. And what will happen is you get this little screen because your video is still uploading. At this point, it's 87% done. And that is because it's only 5 minutes long. But otherwise, this will be another stage in the process where you just twiddle your thumbs and wait or go and do something else. And then we get another panel that says the standard definition version of your video needs to finish processing before your video is unlisted on YouTube. So we don't need to wait for this because this goes into a queue and it doesn't necessarily happen immediately. You can see it's still at 0%. It hasn't even started yet. It will start in due course. It doesn't usually take that long. It depends on how busy YouTube servers are, but you can close this. The video will appear here with all the editing controls when it's ready. Once the video is uploaded, you can also do things like choose your splash screen here. Actually, the thumbnail you can choose between some frames that are grabbed at random, or you can upload your own. Which is sometimes nice to do, and there's various other niceties in YouTube, but that's the basic process. So once again, I used OBS Studio for the recording. I used Handbrake to convert the result of that to a format that DaVinci Resolve liked so that I could do all my editing. And once I had rendered the result from that, I uploaded it to YouTube, where it will appear in due course. Well, that ends this short video that was designed just to take you through the basic workflow of recording a screencast, a demo, a lecture, anything else that you need. I hope this was useful for you. There are quite a few details in each of the pieces of software, but the whole point of this video was to focus on the 2 or 3 things in each case that you need to know. If you run into any other problems, there are of course forums available and tons of help out there on the internet. But I find this process, although time consuming, to be quite smooth and without problems. My name is Robin. Thanks for watching.